Anatoly Karpov is without a doubt one of the top 5 players of all time. He's won more tournaments than any player ever. He was an amazing strategist and he was of course the world champion. But he didn't just play slow strategic games. If he wanted to, he could also play a crushing attacking game. And today you'll see Karpov completely overwhelm Gyula Sax, who was a strong Hungarian GM. This was played in Linares in 1983. Let's get started. Karpov had white and opened with e4. Maybe that move surprises you. Karpov is probably more known as a 1d4 player, but earlier in his career he usually played e4. It continued c5, the Sicilian, knight f3, e6, and after we entered the open Sicilian, Black has a number of options. He can play the Khan variation with a6 or the Taimanov with knight to c6. But Sax goes for yet another variation with knight to f6, attacking e4. And after white defends, Black opts for the Scheveningen variation with d6. Now, there is a reason why the Scheveningen variation isn't played that much anymore, and that's because white can go for this very direct attack with g4, which is called the Keres attack, and makes use of the fact that Black played e6, blocking that light squared bishop. It's not like it wins by force, but Black can quickly get in trouble if he isn't precise. Let's see what happened. White wants to go g5, so h6, stopping that for now. But Karpov insists. He played rook to g1. When he gets the chance, he wants to go h4 and g5, and then the rook will defend the pawn. Now both sides simply develop. Bishop e7, bishop e3, knight to c6. And now queen to e2, which maybe looks like an odd square for the queen, but the point is to castle on the queen side so that white's rook opposes black's queen. Bishop d7 was next, h4 as planned, and now knight takes d4. Black has less space, so he wants to trade pieces, but the second point after the recapture and e5 is to go bishop to c6, attacking white's e-pawn. Therefore queen to d3, queen a5. Black still intends to take that pawn, so he pins the knight. But after Karpov castled, from this point on you get to see some extremely bold play by both sides. But Sax is the one starting it off. He wanted to free his position, and so he decided to take on e4. Remember, that pawn is defended twice, but after knight takes, he planned this follow-up with d5, counterattacking immediately, and Karpov actually decided to give the material back right away. If white tries to save the knight with knight to g3, then d4 attacking the bishop, and after bishop d2, the only safe square, Black can take on a2, threatening with mate. c3 gives the king an escape square, but then rook to d8, and Black is very active with threats to the king and the queen. White is still okay if he is precise, but it's definitely not a lot of fun. Karpov also had the choice to go knight to d2, and if then d4, then first knight to b3, and if Black again takes on a2, then white has this counterplay with queen to f5, and after pawn takes bishop, bishop to c4 targeting f7, and when Black tries to block out the queen with bishop f6, then g5, and this would be winning for white. But what Karpov did in the game was also very strong. He played queen to b3, so giving back the piece, but again there's this attack on f7 with bishop to c4, and not only does white attack that pawn, because white forced Black to take on e4, Black has also opened the position when his king is still stuck on e8. When your king is safe and your opponent's isn't, always try to open up the game. Now Black doesn't want to castle, then white gets a really easy attack with g5. The rook and bishop are already aiming at the king, and even if Black tries to keep things closed with h5, then g6 is also winning, because white has this deadly pin on the diagonal. Therefore rook f8 instead, but Karpov didn't stop here. The attack continued with rook to d5, another very nice move attacking Black's queen, but he does offer Black the exchange. Sax did take the rook, but now you can see that Karpov dominates the light squares, and since black still has an unsafe king and weak pawns, that is definitely a strong exchange sack. Let's see how black tried to defend. Rook to d8, counterattacking the bishop. Bishop c4, then bishop b4. Sack is defending well, now b7 isn't hanging anymore, and he stopped bishop b5 check. After c3, b5, again the best defense, counterattacking instead of passively defending. Bishop e2, bishop d6, but Karpov keeps up the pressure. He went queen to d5, maybe he'll check on c6 and bring the rook to d1, maybe he'll take on b5 with check. Black has a very difficult position, perhaps queen c7 is the best black can do. If white now takes on b5, then after king e7, the black king is actually pretty safe, and black is now threatening with bishop a3 counterattacking the queen. However, going back here, white doesn't have to take on b5. g5 turns out to be very strong. Black doesn't want to take, because then both bishops check the king, and after f6, bishop c4 is deadly for black. But even if black doesn't take, let's say a6, then white can just take on h6 and then on e4, and still white is the one with the big threats, and the rook also got an open foul. Anyway, black didn't play queen to c7, instead king e7 was played, but now Karpov didn't let black escape. First, bishop c5, threatening with queen takes e5 check, so bishop takes, but now white will pick up a couple of pawns. After first queen e5 check and queen takes c5, now the black queen does come over, which also plans to hide the king on the queen side, but Karpov prevents that with queen f5 check, king e7, queen takes e4 check, another pawn for Karpov. So white has already won a pawn for the exchange, but more importantly, white keeps the initiative, and black's king is still wide open to more attacks. It continued queen f5 check, still not allowing king to c8, and then rook to e1, threatening a killer discovered check. Therefore, rook d6 was played, allowing the rook to block the check. But now Karpov played bishop c4 check, which is clever because now black cannot block the check with the rook. So king to d8. Now bishop takes pawn anyway. Karpov isn't even down material anymore, and he's still attacking the black king. Sax didn't last a lot longer. a6 kicking the bishop. g6, but f3 also isn't a bad square for the queen. Now white may infiltrate on a8. And after king to c8, remember how people claim Karpov is just a boring positional player? Well, here he played the amazing rook to e7, which doesn't just look great, it's also the best move, and white is clearly winning now. The point is that if black takes, then black will lose the queen or get checkmated. First queen a8 check, king c7 only move, and after queen a7 check, to continue the game, black has to sack the queen with king to c8, because if he goes king to d8, then queen b8 is mate. So Sax didn't take, instead he tried rook d1 check, and then he took on e7 anyway, but now the end is coming. Queen a8 check, king to c7, queen a7 check, king to d6, and after queen b6 check, black resigned, because if king to d5, then queen d4 check, king e6 and bishop b3 is mate, and if king to e5, then it's exactly the same, queen d4 check, king e6 and bishop b3 is checkmate. Now, as I said at the beginning, if Karpov wanted to play a devastating attacking game, he could definitely do that too. Let's quickly check a couple of key moments. So it started with this Scheveningen variation of the Sicilian, which isn't popular anymore because of this very sharp Keres attack with g4. Then at this point, Sax went for this very daring play with knight takes e4, but Karpov very practically gave the material back and started attacking black's king when it was still stuck in the middle of the board. Karpov knows very well how to attack, and with this very nice exchange sacrifice, he also dominated the light squares. And then somewhere around here, it feels like black's problems were already insurmountable. Karpov just started taking pawns and preventing the black king from escaping. And finally, after an already sharp game, Karpov also finished in style with rook to e7 and soon ended this amazing game. So please let me know in the comments if you enjoyed the game too, and if you have any favorite Karpov games. I covered a couple of other games already, but there will be many more, so be on the lookout for those, and I'll be seeing you guys again soon, and take care.